So today I'm here just to find the high points and plan out the next steps. We have a lot of water coming in this corner that will pump out and a little bit in the other corner. What's nice to see is the water that comes into the foundation space now without foundation walls and without any drainage installed, and to see where it comes. Of course, we'll have a foundation wall, we'll waterproof the wall, we'll have exterior drain tile installed to get the water that comes down to the foundation and out, but we're actually going to put one on the perimeter as well on the inside of the wall. And considering we're doing an unvented crawl space, the key thing is to keep the moisture out. In this mechanical space here, we'll put a crock, so the interior drain tile will come to there, and with the sump pump installed, that way we can get any water that is coming in out. At our house, we moved in, and it's a house from the 80s, and it's a typical crawl space. And anyone that's been in a house with your conventional crawl space, you're probably familiar with this issue, but the vapor barrier wasn't installed correctly. You know, you're supposed to overlap the seams, but that's really not good enough. But the seams weren't even taped. They didn't come up the walls. So the reality is that any vapor was hitting that plastic and working its way around. So the vapor barrier wasn't doing anything for the crawl space. And then you have the vents, which just bring more air in than probably out, depending upon the season and what's going on. But it certainly, no matter what, equalizes the humidity with the outside, and it gets very humid here. With the insulation falling down, because over the years, that's just what happens. We pulled all the insulation out from the floors, leveled out the gravel. I put some drain tile in where it was low and I saw water collecting in the worst of rains. We put a sump pump in, put a radon vent into there, which goes up and out of the attic. Losing the vents, there's a lot less airflow down there, so the radon was important to make sure that if we had any. We didn't actually test for it, I'm just assuming there is. And then put a vapor barrier across the whole of the floors and wrapped it up the walls and actually sealed it up at the top of the sill plate. And then we installed the RMAX insulation on the walls. When we did all this and then put the dehumidifier down there, it's the most regulated space in our house because we don't run central air. So during the summer, it's the coolest, driest place. And during the winter, it remains dry and it almost equalizes with the rest of the house during the winter time. What I'm trying to do is I noticed that there are some undulations in the footers. I think we're probably pretty good through here. We stayed on with our form work. Here, I forgot to pad this up an inch before we poured. I used 2 2x4s for the form, which is 7 inches, but we needed an 8-inch step. And I was going to come back and pad that up, and I honestly just forgot. And as we were pouring, we poured in some extra, and I just kind of beveled it up and guessed at what's an inch. And I can see humps in there. Most of this turned out pretty good. And over here on this far wall, if anything, we're probably low. And it's easier to be low because you can build up, but if you end up too high, then you can't chip down the footer, so it raises the elevation of the whole foundation. So what I'm actually looking for today are high spots, so we know where to set the elevation. Using our high spot as kind of 0 point, start our block work from there. So I suspect some areas at first course will have to build up to make up that difference. So I'm just going to go around, check for the high spots. Okay, so that is our high point on this main run. I'm going to set the laser up where top of wall would be, which is going to be 48 inches up from our current high point. So I've got to bring the laser up 3 inches. So now the laser, there we go. So laser represents top of wall. Okay, top of wall. Now what I'll do is check the step down and our footer along the back of the house. And we've got a 2-inch step down, so I'll be shooting for, we were 4 foot, so now we're at 6 foot. This step down we planned during the excavation, just because we had a hard time reaching solid ground in that corner. And rather than, you can see how much concrete we already have, but rather than even have another 8 inches in here, we stepped this down. And that footer is almost 30 inches deep over there. That's what took up so much concrete. And it might have been cheaper to form another step or a deeper step, but I was just working against time and keep the schedule. Getting the stone today for the crawl space area, and a lot of crawl spaces have 57 stone. I'm getting number 8s, which is a smaller stone. 57s are really rough, and the way we're doing it with the vapor barrier on top, it is too rough and it can pierce that vapor barrier. We need some drainage, but not a lot of drainage. What I really want is a flat, smooth surface to work on, and something we can put the vapor barrier on without piercing it. So we'll have an easier job flattening, smoothing out the number 8 stone, and still having drainage in the area if needed. Again, if everything's done right, it's almost a non-issue, but we're still gonna just plan for the worst scenario. And the most I could get in here is, I think he's got 21 tons on here, which should be just enough to cover a base of about 3 or 4 inches. The other thing I like about the number 8 is it's a whole lot easier maneuver. I'm going to try to do it with my tractor, which is a small bucket, and I don't have the power of a skid steer loader. So getting into larger stone is more difficult to just run into it and lift it. This is going to be a lot easier for me to maneuver with my tractor. It'll take longer, but it will probably save, you know, the cost of renting a skid steer loader and delivery. Yeah, it's looking at $500–600. So while it'll take a little longer, it's still going to be more economical to do it with my tractor. What we're doing is trying to catch, this is the lowest part of the whole foundation and the excavation. So this is where all the water's been collecting. This is also the mechanical room. So we've dug out here to put a sump basin in. Short term, what we're going to do is just, we've got hardware cloth on the entrances to it. Later we'll attach the drain pipe to that, but for now we're just going to use it to collect the water that settles here and get it out. We have a pump that will sit in here, and we've got no power on site, so I've got the kind of a portable generator which runs off batteries, and it's enough to power. It's a 15 amp, 1800 continuous watt, 3500 peak watt, but I can plug that in and pump the water out. We kind of need a construction entrance into the foundation for delivery. Mainly we want to get the equipment in and out, but we also want to get a delivery of block in there. About 1,200 of them, so rather than have them delivered up here and hand carry them or try to get them over the hill, their forklift comes on a 10-foot wide wheelbase. So I need to be able to get this turn here cleared out for the fill and kind of ramp down into the foundation so they can get that machine in. But if we can get the block with the lifts, most of that block at least down into this corner, once we get it cleared out, then the mason won't have to carry them all down, or I won't have to carry them all down. Talk about my tractor real quick. I'm on 140 hours on this machine. I got it knowing we needed a tractor for business, for home, for everything. It was the answer to so many problems. And what's really nice is that it's small and can get in and out of areas. So it got in and out and under our barn. I can get in and out of small foundations around job sites. I can get it into the woods and through trees. Any tractor with larger tires or wider or longer would really become a hindrance. There are sometimes I really miss the power. I can only lift about 500 pounds, and I really don't truly think I can lift a full 500 on the bucket. or the forklifts, or at least I max out at how high it can go. But the tractor has been fantastic. There are very few things I would change on the tractor. I'm just putting it out there for anyone wanting to invest in a tractor for job site, homestead use. It's a perfect machine. It does what you've seen in our videos, hopefully, all the different things it does. And again, going in the next size up, I don't know if it would work with us. I'd like the power, but losing the mobility I have would hurt for our situation. I just got a phone call that the block is going to come a day early. How often does that ever happen, that something's coming early? But that's cool. I just really wasn't ready for it. Was going to be here tomorrow morning before delivery, finish leveling this out. We need a few places to get the block stacked and hopefully get the forklift up in here. It's kind of where we're spreading the gravel now. Less mud to navigate. Like you saw, it's really muddy and nasty in here with a lot of rain. Right now it's dry. So if we get the gravel down, we'll have less of a concern. The closer we can get, the lot less we have to carry the block. So that's the goal right now. They should be here shortly. So I'm kind of just hustling to get this gravel spread. We are out here tonight. We come on the evening because the green laser we use shows up really well, and we're going to square up the foundation. We just had some of our block delivered. The mason starts in 2 days. The laser we're using has 3 beams. Each beam is a 360-degree beam, and there's 1 horizontal beam and 2 vertical. The 2 vertical shoot 90 degrees. They're perpendicular to each other. And so it shoots a square line going that way and one coming this way. We have, from when we did the footing layout, some screws or some marks in here. Line up our laser, that's what Sarah's doing now, with those lines. But I'm going to go on the far end and use the detector and get this back line established. So now we're going to bring the laser down to the other corner and square up along this side just like we did, and then we'll shoot down that length, and that will give us our wall on the far side here. What I'm doing Today is setting up the blocks at location, and Sarah and I were here last night. We set the pins, so I have all the corners located, and I'm setting up the blocks because the mason's someone he's a local tradesman. That he's one of the few local tradesmen, and that's dependable, but he works alone. It's just himself. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the block for him just to make his job easier. We have a lot of corners throughout the project that would be hard to locate. I have a good understanding of the layout and how the footers might deviate to some degree, and where we had issues. So I'm setting up the blocks at each corner. I'm working my way down. I'm measuring and using the laser to square up, but after that I'll come back with a tape measure and pull in each direction to verify we're square. So I'm setting a block at each point, each location, as per the layout, exactly as the block will sit. I'll put pins in the foundation, but just to make it clear where the block goes when we start, I took some spray paint and spray paint each corner, and it makes it very clear where that block sits and goes. I'll put pins in the corner to snap lines off of, but that's just going to make that much more certain. And when we go start tomorrow and the mason starts laying this out. I decided what I'm going to do here is actually mix up a little mud and set a couple of those corners at the right elevation. I'm going to set a story pole up for the mason. I really would like to make sure that the elevation on that far bottom corner is set right, because as we work up, we're kind of then locked in place. We can work out a little discrepancies just as we can with square. We can work out a little bit of those discrepancies in elevation as well, but I want to start right and as right as we can. So I'll set the first few corners down there where he's going to start using the laser. I think Toby likes to use a transit, but if I help ensure that we start right, I'm sure we'll be better off finishing right. There should be a saying for that. But I'm going to go ahead and set those corners in mud at the right elevation, and then he can start working that low end. The mason's someone he's a local tradesman. That he's one of the few local tradesmen, and that's dependable, but he works alone. It's just himself. So I'm going to go ahead and set up the block for him just to make his job easier. We have a lot of corners throughout the project that would be hard to locate. I have a good understanding of the layout and how the footers might deviate to some degree. And this is a story pole I've got in place to show the coursing of the block, and that will be something that I set in a number of the corners for the mason to work off of. It's going to be a lot easier for him working alone to have these in the corners where he can just, as he's working up, work off these story poles rather than setting up a transit and relying on the level. Yeah, and there's the church bells. That means it's 12 o'clock.